This is Tush, and I welcome you to Tushalicious Talk, an Oklahoma City podcast for titillating women, tantalizing conversation. And I thank you in advance for allowing me to be your one-stop shop advocacy connection. Hey, this is Jackie, and I am streaming live on the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma County Facebook page. Today, we will be talking about decriminalizing marijuana because we have a state question coming up. And the guest that we have today is Stephanie Henson, who is the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma Vice President. And then we have a policy counselor from Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform, Michael Olson. And if you would give us an introduction into who you are and what you do.
Hey, everybody. I'm Michael Olson. As was just said, I'm the policy counsel for Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform, which means that I look at policy and research and things of that nature and try to come up with solutions to problems in Oklahoma. I just want to say I'm excited to be here and thank you for inviting me.
So welcome. And then Stephanie, would you like to add on to anything?
Sure. I was just saying thank you. It's lovely to get to meet Michael in person. We have served on the coalition, the core coalition that Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform facilitates, and the League being able to be a part of that has really helped to inform our advocacy work, and we appreciate you so much for that.
Yes, thank you to everybody, especially Damien. His boss is Damien. If you guys don't know Damien Shave, he's like the Marshawn Lynch of criminal justice reform. He's like beast mode all the time. But so, yeah, like I was saying, we are voting to legalize recreational marijuana here in Oklahoma next Tuesday, which is the 7th. So make sure you guys go vote. I hope everyone is registered. And so we've got a lot of talk of, people supporting the state question. And then, of course, we've got other people opposing the state question. But from my personal point of view, with my league hat off, I just feel like personally, I'm looking at a weed store on every corner because medical marijuana is already legal. So when I'm looking at all of these stores on the corner and so many people indulging, it's kind of weird to me that I also know so many people, and this is as me being a Black woman living in a Black community in Oklahoma where we have such high incarceration rates, so many people that if they get their background check pulled, it's still going to show up that they have a felony in their background for marijuana. And then even some accounts, people are still actually in prison for it. So I just wanted personally to know what are the aspects of decriminalizing it. And so, but we'll have like a whole discussion here about, the pros and the cons of it. So I have what I'm going to read here is something I printed off from Oklahoma Policy Institute page. So go there and type in something along the lines of the fact sheet for state question 820, and you can look at what I'm looking at. But the first bullet point with under supporters says allowing adult use recreational marijuana would help address a significant cause of racial imbalance in our state's criminal justice system, in which a disproportionate number of Black Oklahomans have been charged with marijuana-related offenses when compared to white residents. And so if you'll give us just your intake on that, from as being the policy, what your background knowledge on that is.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm glad you mentioned how many dispensaries there are in the existence of medical marijuana, because even with medical marijuana, as recently as 2020, there were 4,500 Oklahomans that were arrested for marijuana offenses every year. And that was even higher, say 10 years ago. Almost 10,000 a year were arrested for marijuana offenses. And as you mentioned, they disproportionately impact generally Black men. Even though data indicates that white men and Black men use marijuana at similar rates, a Black man in Oklahoma is 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana.
Wow.
And 5 times as likely to be prosecuted for marijuana. And so these discrepancies exist, and you can see of those people that are currently incarcerated for marijuana, the majority of are Black. 25% have criminal records that are marijuana related are held by Black men, even though they make up 8% of the population. So there's just a huge disparity in how marijuana was enforced in Oklahoma.
Wow. So let's say that the state question passes and someone gets caught with marijuana. What will the repercussions look like at that point?
Well, if it passes, there will be no repercussions as long as you're under the legal possession limit.
Okay. And that you have to be 21?
And you're over 21.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the next bullet point. Well, before I go to that, was there anything that you want to add on to that from your perspective?
The only thing, that went through my mind when Michael was talking was in light of our 2-year study that the league has done now on criminal justice policy in our state, I'm reminded of, and I guess it was the Stillwater League that especially pointed out that anytime one person finds themselves in the system and, that it then affects and impacts the whole family. And so just the cascading effects of that, the children, as a former school teacher, you think about the kids, the ACE scores, the adverse childhood experience scores of what, it's just, so I do think about the cascading effects as you're talking about that and all that we've learned in the last 2 years, thanks to the amazing work of our league's criminal justice study team.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The intersectionality of it is very real. Yeah. So the next bullet point is the sales from adult use recreational marijuana will generate hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue to fund substance abuse prevention, education, mental health services, and other vital community programs across Oklahoma. So I think my question there would be, what type of prevention education do you feel like would be needed if State Question 820 passes?
So just looking at the law directly, it does impose a 15% excise tax on recreational marijuana sales. And according to a national cannabis law and policy firm, that would raise $821 million in tax revenue in Oklahoma. And that is $434 million of brand new revenue straight from recreational marijuana taxes. And then the law also mandates that 20% of that 15% goes to grants to fund addiction treatment and overdose prevention services. So these are the ways that we can pivot from enforcing marijuana as a public health crisis to instead focusing on much more dangerous substances like opioids and things of that nature. And that way we can really try to attack addiction at its source, and that downstream would really help the criminal justice system because we know something nationwide, 65% of state inmates have either an active substance abuse disorder or were on a substance when they committed their crime. So if you can eliminate that addiction problem, that's 65% of state prisoners that would not be in prison because their addiction problem will be dealt with before the carceral system intervenes.
Right. So when you say that the programs will be there, will it only be limited to if there's a such thing, overdosing on marijuana? And I guess there's a second question inferred there, because I've read a lot of things where people are publishing things saying, oh, the kids are overdosing on marijuana. So I'm trying to figure out how does that, what is the legal term for overdosing? Like, how are they saying that people are overdosing on marijuana? But then back to my original question would be, what are those programs going to be entailed of? It's not going to be just marijuana, right? It'll focus on treatments for harder substances.
Yeah, I think obviously there's a bunch of substances that it could apply to, but I think the goal of what they're trying to accomplish is really attack the opioid crisis and things of that nature. And as for overdoses, I mean, I guess it depends how you define an overdose, but a fatality has never happened, to my knowledge. A marijuana-related overdose fatality has never happened. And I will say that the law does mandate that these are sold in child-proof packaging and they're not marketed in a way towards children. Right. So the law will do as best as it can to help protect children. But at the end of the day, just like cleaning supplies or alcohol, things of that nature, it's really the parents' job to ensure that they're keeping these substances away from their children, whether it's marijuana or another dangerous substance.
Mm-hmm. So would that be covered under the prevention education?
Sorry, what can you
as far as teaching parents how to, because I'll say a lot, I don't know, maybe you've seen them too, but I've seen these things on Facebook and so forth that they're like parents that use marijuana, their kids are overdosing. Like they're talking about like babies and toddlers. Their kids are overdosing on marijuana, but I can't ever find any more information on that. So I was hoping that you would have some information on it.
I mean, I'm sure depending on like the age of the child that having, say, an edible or something could have like negative effects on their health, but I'm not aware of any specific instance or case that resulted in a fatality.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything either. You'd have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, I think I had. Yeah, no, I don't. I wasn't aware.
Yeah, it's somewhere. If you guys Google it, I swear it said that I read a publication that said something about kids, like babies and toddlers, are overdosing. I'm like, well, how do you overdose on marijuana? But
and as I said, like bleach isn't illegalized, but that's dangerous for children.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. So I guess just prevention. I mean, I think it would be common sense, like, don't let your kids drink the bleach, don't let your kids touch the marijuana, but, hopefully that'll be in there. But on to the next. State Question 820 would permit resentencing, reversal, modification, and expungement for prior marijuana related criminal records, removing barriers to housing, employment, and education. So I definitely want to know how this will work out for people that maybe already have the felony on their record. What do they need to do? Do they have to go through a process and apply for this expungement or removing these barriers? Like, what all do they need to do should State Question 820 pass?
Well, according to the language of the law, they will have to file a petition, and that petition must be granted unless granting the petition would pose an unreasonable risk of danger to an identifiable individual's safety. So the court could deny this expungement, but only if there is a real threat to a specific individual that releasing this person would cause. So otherwise, as long as the offense would be made legal by State Question 820, then you can apply to have your record expunged.
Okay. And so you mean like if someone was just like maybe they committed murder or something, or and they also had this marijuana charge, then possibly they might be denied. Maybe that's an example.
Especially, but once again, it can't just be a generalized risk. It has to be to an identifiable individual's safety.
Specific.
So like if that person is saying like, when I get out, I'm going to murder this person, then in that case, they should be kept in
prison. Right. And more than likely they've got more time anyways from the other charge. Yeah. So any questions on?
I had asked, I do some work in the correctional facilities here in Oklahoma, and I had asked friends who are currently incarcerated just for their opinion on some of this. And I think they felt like overwhelmingly 780 took care of most of that, that most people are, but it was interesting too, those perspectives. I appreciate so much the policy perspectives of this was a group of men incarcerated, but, some of the things that they had talked about included, that marijuana was even easier for them to get. Now, this was 20 years ago, but then alcohol. And these were just things that caused questions in my mind, is it because the very idea that you've regulated alcohol and that it made it more difficult to get alcohol than marijuana, this again, 20 years ago. they were talking about how they would be in favor of this, legalizing it. But they also said, interestingly, that the effect, this is a subject of one, by the way, but that for him, the effect that marijuana had on him was actually a calming effect in a way that the alcohol that he would consume caused sometimes behavior that was antisocial, whereas the marijuana, and I say that, you all, just to say that I appreciate that I have their voices that I can lift up. I enjoy having these policy conversations with people who have very different lived experiences than what I have. It was so interesting. It kind of turned into a conversation even about I said, I was one of those kiddos who was scared straight. Like everything in the 80s scared me straight. I was such a scared straight kind of a kiddo, I believe, and so I was doing things. But we also kind of talked about how policies that inspire good behavior and allow you to be, or allow you to be your best. Policies and laws and rules that allow you to just flourish and live your best life, as opposed to maybe even scaring you into getting, and again, even talking about, I don't know, again, this is a philosophical discussion that you kind of can getting off on a tangent, but I'm grateful that I have their voices that I can lift up, because I feel like my own individual viewpoints are sort of this very cloistered, sheltered, right? Yeah, I'm grateful. Right. And by the way, DARE is 100% one of those. When I was studying and doing the PhD work and talking about research, DARE was one of the programs that they always looked at. That they said, we put so much money into DARE, which was a program that was ineffective. It did not work. And so when they talk about, now I said it worked for me. Like I was scared straight, but I mean that's not maybe just the DARE program. I mean, I was in a family that was kind of a scared straight family. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to point to one variable. However, we do television, movies I remember watching in school. They were scaring us straight in the 80s. Nancy Reagan was saying, just say no, and I was listening. I was like, so I appreciate having these conversations and these opportunities. I'm just so grateful to me, this is again the way, and I always feel like with the league, I have to emphasize just good democracy, because when you talk to many, many, many people, if I only talk to people who were brought up like me and saw the world from my viewpoint, I'm only going to get one viewpoint on this issue. And so I'm grateful again to OCJR and just the friends in the carceral system who are able to kind of shed light on their experiences, because my experiences are just so limited, and I don't understand unless I talk to people with a lot of different experiences. Yeah,
you said a couple interesting things during that. The first one, you were talking a lot about substitution with marijuana, and there's a lot of research that actually suggests that marijuana legalization actually decreases teen marijuana use. Because one of the things that you hit on is that once it's regulated, it's much more difficult to obtain it on the black market, and you can't go into a dispensary when you're underage and get it. So it actually lowers statistically teen marijuana use. And also it does act as a substitution somewhat for other more dangerous substances like alcohol and opioids. In Colorado, for instance, after they legalized marijuana, both opioid overdoses and opioid prescriptions went down in the state. So, it's just it's a substitution for other substances that have worse public health outcomes.
Probably even cigarettes. We know we've always got the debate about cigarettes, but when I think about the DARE program, for me, and I never really smoked weed. I might have one or two times. It's just not for me. But I think about how you said that, the say no to drugs. It was more along the lines, my experience, that it was say no to all of the drugs except for marijuana, because marijuana might be okay. That was, when I was like in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Even
in the DARE program that was.
No, they didn't teach that, but I'm saying cognitively, that's what we all heard in my culture. It's stay away from the hard drugs, stay away from the opiates, stay away from cocaine, stay away from PCP, and so forth and so on. But it's okay to smoke marijuana. I'm not saying that the DARE program said that specifically, but that's culturally what we understood it to. Yes. So that being said, the next bullet point says that adults should be able to use medical marijuana as a matter of individual freedom. The potential for abuse of marijuana is low compared to alcohol, opioids, and many other prescription drugs. And so I think we talked about that latter sentence already, but adults should be able to use medical marijuana as a matter of individual freedom. So for the decriminalization aspect of that, do you agree with that, and why or why not?
Yes. I mean, the world and the free market is full of substances that we can decide to use or not use based on what we perceive are the risks and benefits. So to take a substance that, as you just said, is not scientifically addictive and has less public health risks than other substances, to decide that one no one can use seems paternalistic in a way, and also short-sighted scientifically. It's really, in Oklahoma, we love a free market, and there should be a free market of substances that people can decide whether they want to use them or not.
So how was it, like, as you were growing up, from your background, is it a matter of individual freedom?
Marijuana, but for me with marijuana, you mean?
Not just you specifically, but like how you said how you were raised, it was like, yes, no, we should listen.
We were hard no. It was a hard, there were hard, I was raised in a hard no family for everything. And you know what I mean? Like I was a pretty, hard no.
Okay, well, opponents say that marijuana is still illegal at the federal level and in 29 states, creating a patchwork system of laws. So Oklahoma should wait to legalize recreational marijuana until the federal government changes their law.
While that's true, that it is federally illegal, we've seen, at least since the Obama administration, a de-emphasis on marijuana convictions and arrests. But I guess the key for this is there's 21 states that have recreational marijuana, and they're not waiting, and they're collecting all this tax revenue and bettering their state. It doesn't make sense to me that we should wait for a federal declaration that may or may never come. And it just seems like not within the spirit of Oklahoma to rely on the federal government.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. I think we pick and nitpick and cherry pick when to listen to the federal government and when not to.
Because even in our, we've been fighting the last couple of years, the legislation that would suggest that if something like a Freedom to Vote Act were to pass at the federal level, that Oklahomans would not have to adhere to the Freedom to Vote. So, yeah.
Or even with the COVID mask, there was such a whole hullabaloo about, even though the federal government is saying wear the mask, wear the mask, wear the mask, we've got a lot of people in power that were saying, no, that is an infringement upon our First Amendment right, or, whatever rights that we have, we should not have to do it. So, yeah, I think there's a whole discussion available just on that topic alone. But my question from there would be, as far as the decriminalization goes, so what happens? So do you know what is considered a federal charge as far as marijuana goes?
Well, I believe it should be any amount, technically. I don't, what they choose to prosecute, though, is really up to each individual prosecutor.
Oh, that's very interesting. I was under the impression like it had to be 100 pounds a week or something like that.
Could I say, because I think this is so interesting when you're talking about the prosecutors. I watched when Kevin Calvi and Vicky Bohanna were debating this. And of course, we knew that this was potentially, at the time, I think we still were thinking not medicinal, but recreational marijuana might be on the November ballot. And I thought it was interesting because they asked them this question and about their stance on marijuana. And I remember thinking it was interesting because they did, even when you talk about who would talk about their own marijuana use in the past. And Kevin Calvi did say, this is what I thought was interesting. Even gender wise, I thought it was interesting that men more often will have tried marijuana. And I've 100% thought, as someone who is such a woman's rights, women's safety activists. You know, Vicky Bohenna said, for the same reason, I think this might as much as anything suggest why I never really dabbled in. I never wanted to lose control of myself or my sensibilities as a woman, as a single woman living in New York City in the early 90s. Or for me, it was such a, you know, I think a lot about a lot of these laws too. And when you start talking about internal locus of control, what I'm able to control and how much I want to be in control, and do I want to take any substance that would cause me to feel out of control? I want to see us more and more talking to our young girls and boys about that, about developing internal locus of control, as opposed to these laws that, you know, are creating this external locus of control, which I think, and I've not seen the studies, but surely, when we start talking about whether we're regulating or when you've developed an internal locus of control, the idea that our children are going to go out into the world and make safe decisions for them, is just all the greater. I want to see that kind of preventative, proactive policy on the table. I want our kids to develop that.
Yeah. And I think that even goes back again to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because to get there, you need self-actualization, which is at the top. And so how do you get there? And that even goes back to is it individual freedom? Each child will grow up into an adult, and they need to make that decision for themselves. And they should absolutely be able to make that, just like they can choose whatever religion that they're going to be, or whatever things work they're going to do, what college they're going to go to. I mean, whatever they need to figure out who they are for themselves.
It's what we say. It's our League of Women Voters mission: empower the individual, empower the voter, empower and allow you to be, the best you can be, which is that self-actualization that you're talking about.
That being said, I am not trying to say vote yes on 820. We're just talking here. So please don't.
We're dreaming big on what kind of policies, the kind of policies that we would really love to see, that we're, and the ways that we're, helping. For me, I often see it as, what we're allowing for our kids, what we're giving to our kids, and to empower our kids.
Yeah. So I guess another one of the cons that a lot of people are saying, and it's on this list as well, legalizing recreational marijuana might encourage greater abuse of the substance. And that I feel like that is a philosophical debate again within itself. There's that book, I can't remember what the quote was, but it was Plato and the Platypus go to a bar, and they were talking about somebody said that, people that use marijuana go ahead to use, PCP or crack cocaine or something like that. And so this other guy comes back, and he's like, the faux Socrates or whatever. And he says, well, that might be true. It might not be true. But what is even truer is that more people who use crack cocaine or harder drugs, they all drank milk as a toddler. So what are we to say what leads to the harder substance abuse? But just your opinion on where that goes.
I mean, obviously correlation does not equal causation. So, but I will say that a public health, this is all supposedly this opponent position is based on public health, but just the fact of the matter is that incarcerating people is worse for public health than marijuana is. So throwing people in jail for marijuana is a net negative for public health because of all the things that happen once you exit incarceration. You're more likely, you die at a younger age, you have difficulty getting a job, you could be homeless, all of these things that are terrible for public health. That are created by our fear of marijuana as a public health crisis. It's just interesting that incarcerating people for marijuana is worse for public health than marijuana itself.
I had to think about that, but yes, that's actually true. When you think about the intersectionality of it, like you were saying, you take the parents away from the home, and then they're in school without a parent, and the more of a burden goes on the teachers and so to other parts of society. So that's I would definitely agree with that. So citing the need for more comprehensive research, the American Medical Association opposes legalization of marijuana for recreational use. And I have not studied this, but I'm wanting to know if you know more information about that.
I don't know specifically, but I'd assume they just don't have enough data on legalization because like it just happened in Colorado and Washington, like just a couple of years ago. So I'm assuming they don't have a longitudinal study. Mm-hmm. So they're just erring on the safe side. But I mean, we do a lot of medical treatments and things of that nature that don't have a 20-year study that they approve. So I find it interesting. I'm not saying that they're wrong, right? But there's just, without the evidence, I don't necessarily think you can use this as a reason to not legalize.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, even as far as the League of Women Voters goes in Oklahoma, we have not taken a position one way or the other. We're neutral on it. So, and we did a whole study on it ourselves. We did a whole forum on it and everything. So it's kind of like the same thing. There's just, the conclusion was more research is needed. So, that's kind of why I'm doing this here. I'm trying to figure out more research right now. So the last bullet point we're going to talk about. So legalization of medical marijuana encouraged criminal enterprises to come to the state to participate in black market marijuana operations. Loosening the state's marijuana laws further would make those problems worse. And I have seen people go back and forth about this on Facebook. I even remember there's one small town in Oklahoma where like the sheriff of the city posted something very derogatory on Facebook. And he pretty much called Hispanics, aliens and this, that, and the other. And they're going to come with the cartels and they're going to harm Oklahoma. And it was really ugly. It was really ugly. So, yeah, I definitely would like your.
Yeah, this one's my favorite because it's just not factual, in my opinion. And it's interesting what you said about being alien, because one of the original reasons that marijuana was criminalized was in the 1930s. They were calling it an alien scourge that was specifically in use in Latin American and black communities. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole racialized reason that it was criminalized to begin with, when other substances that are mind-altering were never criminalized. But there's a lot of data about violence and marijuana use, and there's been no link found in any study. There's been one meta-analysis that I think looked at 18 studies, and not a single one found a link between crime and recreational marijuana use. And one study, as you were talking about earlier, one study actually found a decrease with marijuana legalization and violent crime, most likely because of what you were stating earlier, compared to other substances like alcohol that are more criminogenic. And that's just from the people perspective. There was a Washington State study in 2018 that showed that the police solved significantly more crimes after marijuana was legalized, because they don't have to they can actually focus on serious crimes instead of dealing with marijuana constantly all day, every day, just stopping people from marijuana. You can actually go and do real police work and solve more crimes. And then finally, I don't understand the argument necessarily, because I don't see a world in which legalization and regulation makes a black market worse. That doesn't really make sense to me. In 2006, there was a United States federal government report that said the value of Mexican cartels was at $13.8 billion in 2006, and $8.5 billion of that revenue was coming from marijuana sales within the United States. So if we can eliminate that black market through the regulation and legalization of marijuana, that causes a huge financial hit to the cartels. Now, whether this estimate is correct, I don't know, but even just a smaller proportion of marijuana sales in the U.S., a part of their overall revenue, if that is taken away, that is a financial problem for the cartels, and that reduces violence, not only in the United States, but elsewhere in the world as well.
Would you be able to compare it, Michael, to like how prohibition, the year of the 1920s were so the mafia and because all of that illegal activity with the hooch, I guess, the hooch illegal activity was, and then once that was overturned, prohibition was overturned, and you could regulate again, and then things kind of went back to that homeostasis of,
Yeah, you don't really see organized crime around alcohol very often in the United States in these days. So, I mean...
But in the 20s, you did.
Exactly. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a very apt comparison.
Mm-hmm. Makes total sense. So, we are at the end of these. Are there any... other thoughts or any other 2 cents that you want to put in at the last second?
I think that State Question 820 is an opportunity for Oklahoma to really focus on what matters public health wise, addiction treatment wise, and police resource wise. If we can focus on the true drivers of crime in our state, which is addiction, and which is freeing up police to solve crimes and to work the streets more efficiently. Because we know that Oklahoma has a very high crime rate. We do all this in our criminal justice system, but we're not really seeing a resultant drop in crime. So we got to reprioritize how we're attacking crime by trying to attack it before it occurs at the level of addiction, at the level of the family, things of that nature. So I think legalization of marijuana is a step towards that goal.
And I would just say, if you support the pros, go and vote yes on 820. And if you see too many cons, then go ahead and vote no on 820. But the polls open on Thursday. Early voting is on Thursday and Friday. There's no Saturday voting this time. And then other than that, you can vote on Tuesday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Go to the Oklahoma voter portal to figure out where you are supposed to be and vote at. And other than this election still in the future, pay attention, and vote. Tushalicious Talk is part of the Breaking Ice, Building Bridges community podcast platform, brought to you by Possibilities, Inc.